Hello friends, welcome to my channel. This is a girl Mercy. If you're a returning subscriber, I appreciate you. If you're new to this channel, please click on the subscribe button, share this video. I know the content that is being shared on this channel will help you or help someone out there who get to see this video. So today I'm going to talk about how to set aside a consent judgment. Now, what is a consent judgment? A consent judgment is a judgment that is given where parties meet to settle their issues outside the court. Now, when the issues are being resolved amicably, then parties are to sign the terms of settlement as per their agreement to now bring it to court, and for the court to now enter it as a consent judgment where parties have agreed, we are resolving our differences. Okay, to this extent, this is what I'm going to pay, or if there's no payment, okay, this is my liability to this extent, this is the other party's liability to this extent. That way we are done with this matter. So terms are filed, then the court doesn't have any other option than to incorporate the terms as a consent judgment. Now, where the consent judgment has been given is like a normal judgment. Yeah, it has all the features of a normal judgment. It's a normal judgment, and it's difficult to dislodge a consent judgment, even when placed side by side with the normal judgment. The consent judgment rates more or is higher because it's difficult to dislodge, because it's assumed that parties knew what they were doing, and you can't come and destroy whatever parties have agreed to do. That is why before a consent judgment is entered, the courts usually want to see representative of both sides to ask them, you've said to say yes, my lord. The court will ask the registrar of court to read out those terms of settlement, so that the court will be sure that these terms were not imposed on any of the parties. It's not something that was coerced. When the registrar reads the terms of settlement, the parties will verify to the court that they agree to the terms of settlement. Then the court will not enter it as a consent judgment. Now, where, for example, someone who is not part of the consent judgment comes tomorrow and says, this judgment affects my interest, and I feel that if I was aware of this consent judgment or of this suit, I wouldn't have entered a consent judgment with the parties or either of the parties. So, and you know that the consent judgment only binds the parties to it, not a stranger. So, when a stranger comes to say, I want this judgment set aside, what can the person do? Now, there are two major ways you can set aside a consent judgment. One, you must prove that to even go that route, you have to prove that there was fraud and there was a misrepresentation of facts. These two grounds are very important before even the court will listen to you as to set aside the consent judgment. Is there fraud? Is there misrepresentation of facts? Was a consent judgment obtained under duress? This is very tricky, because by the time the court is asking those questions before it is adopted, assume that if there was duress, parties will say, there was duress, or I was forced. At that point there won't be any consent judgment. But where the stranger or the party who is not a person who is not a party to the consent judgment can prove that there was duress, or that the people that represented the parties didn't have the authority to do so, or the people that entered the judgment, the consent judgment, or signed the terms, didn't have the authority to proceed to enter those terms. We can prove it. Then these are grounds that can be used by the court in looking at whether to set it aside or not. Now, if there's the stranger can also prove that there was mutual mistake, not just unilateral mistake as to both with respect to the parties. It may be mistake as to the certainty of the property, for example, or mistake as to what actually they were trying to agree on. If you can prove there was mutual mistake on both parties, not unilateral, then these are grounds you can bring forth to set aside the consent judgment. Now, just like I've earlier said, that a consent judgment is higher in efficacy and has a higher binding effect than an ordinary judgment, and it's very difficult to dislodge. Now, an aggrieved party who feels that the consent judgment has affected his interests, can challenge the consent judgment either by appealing against the judgment, or you file a fresh action asking the court to vacate the judgment. You file an appeal, or you file a fresh suit asking the court to vacate the order. Remember that the consent judgment, being a final decision, in appropriate cases, it can sustain a plea of res judicata. Where peradventure someone is relitigating on the same issues, they can bring it up, and that is the certificatory copy of the consent judgment, that a consent judgment has been entered with respect to these issues or between these parties, and the person is relitigating on it again. So this is very, very important. So the two major routes I've earlier said is either you appeal or you file a fresh suit asking the court to vacate this judgment. Remember, as I've earlier said, that a consent judgment only binds parties to